The autumn afternoon of 1967 had painted Los Angeles in shades of gold and amber. But inside the small gymnasium in Chinatown, the light was muted, filtered through dusty windows that hadn't been cleaned in months. The smell of sandalwood incense, mixed with sweat and old leather, filled the cramped space. Bruce Lee was in the middle of demonstrating a technique to his small group of students, when the room suddenly grew darker. If you want to discover what happened when the tallest man in basketball met the fastest man in martial arts, and why this encounter led to one of cinema's most unforgettable fight scenes, stay until the end. You won't regret it. The door had opened, but the sunlight that should have streamed in was blocked almost entirely. A shadow fell across the wooden floor, stretching impossibly long. Bruce's students turned as one, and their jaws dropped in unison. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, still known as Lew Alcindor in those days, had to duck nearly a foot to fit through the doorframe. At 7 feet 2 inches tall, he made the modest gymnasium feel like a dollhouse. The ceiling, already low, seemed to press down against the top of his closely cropped head. At 20 years old, he was already the most dominant force in college basketball, leading UCLA to championship after championship with a grace that belied his enormous frame. The NCAA had actually banned the dunk shot, largely because of him. That's how unstoppable he had become. His skyhook was already developing into the most lethal offensive weapon basketball had ever seen. He stood there for a moment, unfolding himself to his full height, his head nearly brushing the exposed pipes that ran across the ceiling. 230 pounds of lean muscle wrapped around a frame that seemed designed by nature to reach heights others could only dream of. His presence was overwhelming, not aggressive, but simply massive. Like a gentle redwood that had somehow wandered into a garden shed, Bruce Lee walked toward him without hesitation, craning his neck to look up at his visitor. The contrast was almost absurd. Bruce stood 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed perhaps 140 pounds. Next to Kareem, he looked like a child approaching a monument. "Welcome," Bruce said, his voice carrying the calm confidence that never wavered, regardless of circumstance. "I see our ceiling wasn't built with you in mind." Kareem's face softened into a smile. "No ceiling ever is." His voice was deep but gentle, carrying an intelligence that matched his physical gifts. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "I've heard about you, Mr. Lee. I've seen footage of your demonstrations. I came to ask you something." "Ask," Kareem, who were still staring at him as if a mythical creature had just materialized in their midst. He seemed almost embarrassed by the attention, hunching his shoulders slightly in an unconscious attempt to minimize his presence. "Can someone your size," he paused, searching for words that wouldn't offend, "teach someone my size? I mean, our bodies are so different. How could what works for you possibly work for me?" The question hung in the air. It was honest, direct, and revealed a genuine uncertainty that few would have expected from the most dominant athlete in college sports. Bruce studied the young giant for a long moment, then smiled. "An interesting question. Come, let's explore it together." He dismissed his students for the day, and within minutes the gymnasium held only 3 people: Bruce, Kareem, and Don Inosanto, Bruce's most trusted training partner and assistant. The space that had felt crowded with 8 students now seemed even smaller, with Kareem filling it. "Why martial arts?" Bruce asked, settling into a chair while Kareem attempted to fold his enormous frame onto a bench that groaned in protest. "You're already the best in the world at what you do." Kareem considered the question carefully. "Basketball is my profession, but I've always been fascinated by martial arts, the philosophy, the discipline, and truthfully," he paused, choosing his words, "my size is both a gift and a curse." Bruce leaned forward, interested. "Explain." "On the court, I dominate. The skyhook is virtually unstoppable because of my height and reach. But I've also learned that size makes you a target. Smaller, faster players find ways around me. They slip beneath my arms, exploit my turning radius. Guards who are a foot shorter than me sometimes make me look slow, clumsy even." Kareem's voice carried a trace of frustration. "Sometimes I feel like a castle, powerful but slow, easy to see coming, easy to plan against. Everyone knows where the castle is. Nobody is surprised by the castle, and you think martial arts might help? I think understanding movement differently might help. But every martial artist I've approached has either been intimidated by my size or tried to teach me techniques designed for average bodies." Kareem spread his enormous hands. I need something that works for this. Bruce stood and walked to the center of the mat. Show me. Try to grab me. Kareem rose from the bench, which creaked with relief. He moved toward Bruce with surprising fluidity for a man his size. His arm extended, reaching with that famous wingspan that had blocked countless shots and gathered thousands of rebounds. His hand closed on empty air. Bruce had moved not backward, not to the side, but forward and downward, slipping beneath Kareem's outstretched arm and emerging behind him. By the time Kareem turned, Bruce was already in a different position entirely. It was like watching someone try to catch smoke with their bare hands. Again, Bruce said. Kareem tried, and tried again. His arms swept through space like great tree branches in a storm. His long legs carried him forward with surprising speed, but Bruce was never where those massive limbs arrived. He flowed around Kareem like water around a great stone, always moving, never meeting force with force. After several minutes, Kareem stopped, breathing harder than he did during basketball practice. I can't touch you, and I have almost 4 feet of reach advantage. Reach is only an advantage if your opponent agrees to fight at that distance, Bruce explained. You expect me to stand where your arms are most effective, but I refuse. I fight where my tools work best, not yours. He moved closer to Kareem, standing almost directly beneath the giant's chest. Here, at this range, your long arms become awkward. They're designed to extend, not to fold back. Your advantage becomes your limitation. Kareem looked down at Bruce, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're not fighting my strengths. You're denying them. Exactly. Now, let's try something else. Bruce stepped back. Kick me. Kareem hesitated. His legs were perhaps his most formidable weapons, tree trunks, that could propel his massive frame into the air with unexpected explosiveness. I don't want to hurt you. You won't. Trust me. Kareem threw a front kick, holding back significantly. Bruce didn't block it, didn't try to absorb the impact. He simply stepped at an angle, letting the kick sail past, and tapped the back of Kareem's supporting knee. The giant wobbled, his balance momentarily compromised. It was gentle, controlled, but the message was clear. A 7'2" man, for all his power and reach, could be destabilized by a precise touch to a joint that existed at the same height as everyone else's. Your legs are longer than mine, Bruce said. They generate more power, cover more distance, but they also take longer to return to position. And your knee, everyone's knee, is at the same height relative to the ground. 7 feet or 5 feet, the joint bends the same way. The body has universal vulnerabilities, regardless of its size. Kareem straightened, rubbing his knee thoughtfully. You're saying my height is irrelevant? I'm saying your height is a factor, not a definition. You've built your basketball career around maximizing your size advantage. That's intelligent. But you've also, perhaps unconsciously, accepted that your size limits you in certain ways. You move like a big man because you believe that's how big men must move. Bruce turned to Dan innocently. The pad, please. Don retrieved a thick striking pad and positioned it against his chest. Bruce stood inches away, his fist barely touching the leather surface. Watch carefully, Bruce said to Kareem. The movement was almost invisible. A small compression, a wave of energy, and then the sharp crack of impact. Dan, who had braced himself thoroughly, stumbled backward several feet. Kareem's eyes went wide. That's impossible, the giant whispered, his voice filled with genuine awe. There was no wind-up, no distance, no leverage. Everything I know about physics says that shouldn't work. Where does the power come from? From efficiency. From using every part of the body as a unified system rather than isolated components. From eliminating every wasted movement. Bruce turned to face Kareem. Your size gives you natural power, but you rely on that size, that mass. You throw your weight into movements because you've always had weight to throw. What if you could add technical efficiency to your natural gifts? What if you could combine the power of a giant with the precision of a hummingbird? Kareem was silent for a long moment, processing. Then he spoke slowly. My skyhook works because of my height. No one can block it. But what you're describing, it's power that doesn't depend on physical advantages. Be water, my friend, Bruce said. Water fills whatever container it enters. A giant vessel or a tiny cup, the water adapts. It doesn't insist on being a certain shape. Your body is your container. Kareem, 7 feet 2 inches of container. The question is whether you'll move like water inside it, or whether you'll move like a man trapped by his own dimensions. Something shifted in Kareem's expression. Everyone has always told me how to use my height. Stand here. Reach there. Block this way. You're the first person who's talked about moving beyond it. Bruce smiled. Not beyond it. Through it, your height is real. Your reach is real. But they don't have to dictate how you think about movement. A small man who thinks he's limited by his size is just as trapped as a tall man who thinks he's defined by the afternoon stretched into evening. Bruce demonstrated techniques adapted for Kareem's unique frame, ways to use his extraordinary reach defensively, methods for generating power that didn't depend on his size advantage, footwork patterns that could make even a 7'2" giant appear to flow rather than lumber. Kareem absorbed everything with the intensity that had made him a basketball prodigy. He asked questions that revealed a sophisticated understanding of body mechanics, made connections between what Bruce was teaching and what he already knew from athletics. "I want to study with you," Kareem said finally. As the last light faded from the gymnasium windows, regularly, not just today, Bruce considered him carefully. Many people come to me looking for advantages, looking for techniques they can use to dominate others. Why should I teach you? Because I didn't come here to learn how to use my size against smaller people. I came here to learn how to move beyond my size entirely. Kareem paused. I've been the biggest person in every room my whole life. I want to understand what it feels like to be free of that. Bruce nodded slowly. Most people want power. You want freedom? That's rare. He extended his hand, a gesture that required Kareem to bend nearly double to reciprocate. Welcome, student. In the years that followed, Kareem became one of Bruce Lee's most dedicated students. He trained regularly at the Chinatown Gymnasium, folding his massive frame through techniques that had never been designed for someone his size. Discovering new possibilities with each session, their relationship culminated in 1972 with the filming of Game of Death. Bruce had written a scene specifically for Kareem, a fight in a pagoda where the ultimate guardian would be a giant who transcended normal fighting logic. The footage they created together would become legendary. 11 minutes of cinema showing the seemingly impossible spectacle of a 5'7", each man using every advantage his unique body provided. It was not acting. It was two friends, two martial artists, demonstrating through choreography everything they had learned from each other. Bruce taught me that size is just one variable, Kareem would say in interviews decades later. Long after he had become the NBA's all-time leading scorer, I brought that understanding to basketball. The skyhook was about my height, yes, but the footwork, the balance, the efficiency that came from Chinatown, that came from learning to be water in a 7'2" container. The lesson of that autumn afternoon transcends physical dimensions. It speaks to anyone who feels defined by their circumstances, too tall, too short, too young, too old, to anything. The water doesn't complain about the shape of its container. It simply adapts, flows, and finds its way. If this story inspired you and made you think differently about your own limitations, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to understand that our greatest perceived advantages might also be our invisible prisons. Comment below, size or speed, which is the true advantage?